Kia ora and welcome to Cinema in Context, where we discuss all things film and the connections between. My name is Jeremy Downing.
I'm William Chen.
And I'm Sarah Watt.
And each month at Cinema in Context, we discuss two films, one current and one retrospective, with some connection. It could be the same director, the same actor, or a similar theme. However, in another breaking of protocol, we decided that for the first episode of 2022 and our 70th episode of Cinema in Context, can we give ourselves a round of applause?
Whoa!
Yeah. 70 months. I think we're in our 6th year. Sound about right? Coming into our 7th, which is very exciting. But for our 70th episode, we decided to look at 7 films from the summer. So for any of our Northern Hemisphere listeners, it is the summer down here in Aotearoa. And we've been in lockdown in Auckland, as has much of the world been disrupted by COVID. And it seemed to be that after getting out of that lockdown, we were overwhelmed with a plethora, I believe we used that word last time as well, a plethora of cinema magic. So this is a chance to discuss and talk about them. I want to give a shout out to my friend Sophie, who's a regular listener. She requested that we talk about The Power of Dog.
Good on her.
We talked about maybe pairing that with the piano for this episode, didn't we?
So this one's for you, Sophie.
Yes.
The piano does feature prominently in both movies.
That's right. But we decided to focus more broadly just to capture some of the brilliance of the what has been this great summer. In terms of spoilers, I think we're going to try and remain relatively spoiler-free.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think with all things, if you haven't seen some of these episodes and you want to save all of the surprises, I would suggest pausing it and coming back to this episode at a future date. But without further ado, here are our 7 films in alphabetical order. Ooh. Don't Look Up, Encanto, The French Dispatch, House of Gucci, The Matrix Resurrections, the aforementioned Power of Dog. Is it The Power of Dog?
The Power of the Dog.
The Power of the Dog. Thank you, Sarah.
Or is it just Power of the Dog?
The Power of the Dog.
The Power of the Dog.
The Power of the Dog. Interesting. And West Side Story. So those are our 7 films. Should we start with Don't Look Up? I'm happy to jump in with a bit of a plot summary.
Explain to us what this Netflix film is all about, Jeremy.
So this Netflix film, I think probably more than anything, has a very, very prominent all-star cast. So it stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence as the leads, with supporting characters of Meryl Streep, Jonah Hill, Timothy Chalamet. Who else have we got?
Melanie Lynskey.
Oh, Melanie Lynskey is wonderful. And they play a collection of characters, but the main 2 leads are scientists who have spotted a meteor, or is it an asteroid? Is it a meteor when it enters in the atmosphere?
I think you're talking to the wrong type of scientist
All right.
here.
Okay, cool. And this is coming straight for Earth. It's going to most certainly destroy the planet. And so they are very urgent in their efforts to try and communicate that to the President of the United States, to various media outlets and people around the world. Well, actually, mostly in the United States. But the idea is that it's around the world to warn people of this asteroid.
And they've got 6 months, is that right? So it's 6 months until the asteroid hits.
That is correct.
Right.
But nobody seems to care too much or take it very seriously. And what transpires is a social satire that could be about global warming, it could be about the state of American politics, it could be about COVID, it could be about a range of things, but it is very damning of the current state of affairs. All wrapped up in a kind of comedic package, directed and written by Adam McKay, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Adam McKay did The Big Short, which was that incredibly complex, and I think on first viewing for me, incredibly complex finance film, the one about the not the Great Depression. What was the latest one called?
Global financial crisis.
The GFC, that's right. With a similarly starry cast. And wasn't he one of the showrunners of Succession?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Because then he followed up with Vice, the Dick Cheney
Oh,
movie.
I loved Vice. Absolutely. So, politically oriented, and climate change, among other things.
I wonder if they were trying to make it for quite a period of time, and then it's become more and more relevant with different layers as COVID's come into play.
Well, isn't that meta? That he's been trying to make a film that's effectively about the world not listening to imminent peril, and everyone's like, but not now, Adam, not now. I mean, for crying out loud.
What do you think, William? Let's pass it over to you.
Oh, what do I think? Well, I might just answer in a song. I'm sorry, the audience. I only wrote one song for these 7 movies. So
And
this
it's
is the
it's
only
one of the non-musicals where there's so much music
Yes.
in the other movies.
So this is using a well-known musical tune. My song for my review of Don't Look Up. Okay. There was a time when McKay made good movies, and the movies were funny. There was a time when Will Ferrell, just riffing, made large sums of money. There was a time, then it all went wrong. I dreamed a dream of jokes gone by. Those equal opportunity offenders. Before limp satire had run dry, bogged down by loud liberal agenda. No more Talladega Nights. No more classics like Step Brothers or Catherine Hahn and Adam Scott's rendition of Sweet Child O' Mine. Mine. Hey!
Beautiful.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh, marvelous.
Yeah, I hated this movie.
Oh.
Adam McKay used to make really good stuff, and I agree, Sarah. I thought The Big Short, and to some extent Vice. I like Big Short a lot more than Vice.
Yeah.
But they have something to say, and they did so in an entertaining yet, educational fashion. This movie just seemed like a liberal on his high horse going, rah, 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 rah. World sucks, rah, rah, rah. Which is okay, fine. But the crux of it, or the two main things that I just didn't enjoy, I thought the satire was super broad and just weak.
Yeah.
And other things had done it better. I think, in our chat, I talked about stuff like The Boys, with social media satire. And that's a superhero satire, but it's so much more on the pulse of what's actually happening with social media. And then I just did not find it funny. Like, the comedy really didn't work for me. I thought the casting was great. I think Leo, in particular, is just such a believable scientist.
He really is. I thought his performance was marvelous.
Like bug-eyed and his face going red and just not a good public speaker. And Melanie Lynskey is also just awesome in this movie. The really broad stuff like Meryl Streep, Jonah Hill, I can take it or leave it, but I just didn't find it funny, and I didn't find it inspirational in any form.
I love that scene with Melanie Lynskey and Cate Blanchett and Leonardo DiCaprio, and I was like, man, Melanie Lynskey is such a great actor, and just to see her, not just like holding her own sounds patronizing to Melanie Lynskey, but she's with these pretty massive names, and I mean, she started her career with Kate Winslet, so there's a connection there with Leonardo DiCaprio. But that was a cool scene, and you just everything within me was like on her side when she's throwing things at Leo, and Kate Blanchett's just standing there looking terrible. Like, she looks great, but she's I loved it.
Melanie's so marvelous, and listeners will be probably watching Yellow Jackets, which I cannot rave more highly about. And it's interesting, I read a wonderful profile of Melanie Lynskey that articulated one of her talents is she has such a contained, gentle way about her that when she gets mad, you are quite shocked and you really take it seriously, because she seems like a very contained person who's really, really angry. And it's just, she's so great at those sorts of characters.
I mean, I can't help but think of Heavenly Creatures. When she gets really, really angry, she kills your mum with a brick and a stocking.
A little, yes, that's a shorthand. But yes, that's exactly right.
I hear you, William. I fully can appreciate that. And I think about that film Mother that we reviewed many years ago, where I think if you were on board with the commentary it was making, then you had a good time. Or I just found that so on the nose, and I just was once the allegory was clear in that film, I was like, oh, this is so infuriating. So I could definitely appreciate that. I watched Don't Look Up in quite a forgiving environment. It was during Christmas time. It was the whole my whole larger family sitting around in the lounge. Let's put on this movie. All ages. My nephew's in there who's 14. My parents are in there who are grandparents. And for all of the things you said, I don't disagree with you, but I had a good time.
Awesome.
And I think the stuff that like none of us were reading too heavily into it. Like we just watched a story, and I think if I'd been in a different environment or different space, it would have been quite a different viewing experience.
I suppose there's things like the fact that Meryl Streep is so obviously a Donald Trump, and Jonah Hill is playing her son, but effectively is the Jared Kushner character. And so once the parody's been explained, you really, really either have to run with it and do it really well, or don't do it at all, because that was the joke, right? And initially, I have to think. Initially, I was like, I like it. I like their interaction. But then you've got to keep that going or forget about it.
Yeah. For me, it was also Mark Rylance as the tech guy. It's like, okay, I see where you're going with this.
Right.
I think because when I watched it, I wasn't thinking like climate change came to mind. I was like, this could be climate change, but I was more acutely thinking about anti-vax sentiment in the midst of a pandemic. That's kind of where my mind was at. And I guess with family members and loved ones who are, I was home in my hometown, and there's people in my family who are terrified, and that's resulted in them being kind of outwardly anti-vaccination. And I was like, this is just the stupidest thing ever. And so when there's a scene in that movie where Jennifer Lawrence goes to stay with her parents, and they go, look, we don't want any politics. We're just what we're about is the jobs that the media right's going to create, which just made me laugh so much, because the kind of level of stupidity at one level, but the very domestic kind of reality at another level. And she's in this very privileged position as this scientist. Like that to me spoke quite clearly to the current state of things. And so I was able to look past the very kind of one-note reading of Republican politics and kind of a very one-note reading of global, well, not one-note reading of global warming, but that being seen as the reading of the film.
So maybe this is a challenge. And perhaps a challenge to Adam McKay. If you're going to make a film that you want to be accessible to all audiences, and you want it to be informative and possibly persuasive in a particular way, you've got to do better. Because otherwise, the liberals among us might watch it and go, well, that wasn't very funny, but we hear you, but we already believed it.
Yeah, preaching to the choir kind of
Right, preaching to the choir, but not preaching very well. And those who need a heck of a lot more persuasion of whatever is important are going to lose it because it wasn't delivered very well, or it's...
Like Veep, you never know what side of the political spectrum anyone sits, and as a result, people will respond to it, and they will see they'll see their heroes and villains.
Lovely.
So Veep is never clear.
Right.
She is never clearly Republican or Democrat.
That's very, very cleverly done.
And they've said that when all of the politicians that watch it and love that show, they always see the opponents.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, that's just like my opponent, blah, blah, blah. They never see
Fantastic.
themselves as much. But yeah. So we're going to do a system of either thumbs up or thumbs down. So double thumbs up is like, wow, that's epic. Double thumbs down is that is a complete stinker. And so something in between. How are we going to do this? Sarah, what's your...
I'm just going to go one thumb up because I didn't hate it, and there were bits... And the thing is, I went into it thinking everyone hates this and thinks it's rubbish, and I didn't think it was that rubbish. And so I think things like Leonardo's performance, and as I say, the initial cleverness around the parent relationship in the White House, I was like, well, this isn't as dire as I thought, but I just don't think it's good enough.
2 thumbs way down for me. Just bounced off real hard. Yeah, did not work for me at all.
And that's not surprising based on your criticisms, which, I don't disagree with, but I still had a good time, so for me it's a 1 thumb up as well. 1 thumb up for our first film, Don't Look Up.
Right.
I'm going to pass it to William. William, would you like to introduce us to our next movie?
Yeah, sure thing. So, guys. I just watched a visually resplendent movie on Disney Plus, featuring a multi-generational family all living within the same grandiose and esoteric residence. Through the matriarch's travails, the children all display preternatural talents, wowing the community. However, the absence of the patriarch has magnified each of their neuroses, and the household is threatened with collapse unless everyone learns that the greatest and most difficult of talents is family. But enough about Royal Tenenbaums.
Oh,
It's on
nice.
Disney Plus.
It's on because they bought Fox.
Oh, wow.
I just watched that recently. I
love the
didn't even
connection
make
to
that.
Prestige
Yeah.
there. So what's the actual movie?
Encanto.
Encanto.
So the new film from one of the directors of Tangled. Gosh, this is a great movie. So basically, the family Madrigal in Colombia display all sorts of crazy X-Men-like powers, and each time a new child of the family gets their powers, this living house that they live in, a new room opens up with magical delights within. And the movie focuses on a young woman, is it Maribel or Mirabel?
Mirabel.
Mirabel, played by Stephanie Beatriz, who is the only member of her family who does not have any powers.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah,
It's heartbreaking.
and then of course stuff goes on from there, and it's about her relationship with her abuela. It's about the family's relationship with their past and how family sticks together and how that brings more strength than any of their individual powers.
Lovely. I think it's fair to say that the real impressive elements of this movie from a narrative perspective, kind of, we would need to spoil the film, I think, to really talk about it, but it covers a certain message about family that I haven't seen quite like this before.
Which is interesting you say that, because I feel like every film nowadays is about family, whether it's the fast movies to...
Explicitly so.
Right, so it's nice, isn't it, that Encanto has been able to deliver a different version of the family message.
Well, it's not that message of like, we're family, we're together. It's actually... We've got to this point and things are going wrong. Like there's the song from, is it Luisa, the strong sister?
Yeah.
And it turns out she's buckling under the pressure.
Yeah.
As an oldest child, I fully
Yes.
can relate. And then you've got the beautiful sister who actually, she's just sick of perfection and she wants to just be creative and make
So the
what she likes.
invidiousness of our talents, our gifts, and yeah, that's right.
And how it can box us in.
And also why it boxes them in is because of the family unit.
Yes.
Right? The family, even though it's loving and it celebrates success, that very nature ends up being really, really toxic, especially to people like Mirabel, who has no powers and has been ostracized in a really awful way. I cannot believe how dark this movie gets, you guys.
Yeah.
Never explicitly so. Like there's no, there's not much violence. There's not really even a real villain.
Yeah.
But man, this goes to some really weird psychological places. In a subtle-ish way, and I really, really appreciated that.
So my boyfriend and I, we went and saw this at the movies. Like, we had to go at 10 a.m. on a Sunday because it was the only time it was on last year when everything was on. Had a brilliant time, and I came out of it going, great film. Music, I was a bit like, it just sounds like every other Lin-Manuel Miranda musical. But my gosh, I'm going to step back from that statement because it's been popping up on TikTok.
Okay.
The album's become, I think it's now, has it eclipsed the Frozen soundtrack? But it's
Lord.
something like that.
Goodness
Like it's
gracious.
breaking records on streaming platforms.
And can I just ask, is it a Lin-Manuel Miranda?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't make that connection,
Yeah.
stupidly. Okay,
Yeah.
right.
I wasn't a huge fan of the music. I felt some of the songs were catchy, like Luisa's song, and the
We don't talk about
yes,
Bruno.
that one chorus.
Which that's hitting on the charts at the moment.
Wow.
The more that I've listened to it, the more I've just, and I find this with Lin-Manuel Miranda's stuff, it's so intricate that the more I listen to it, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I'm appreciating this more and more. But no, I thought it was fantastic. And another thing I watched on TikTok again is that the Disney executives wanted them to make Louisa's character not so muscly and big because they were afraid that it would affect toy sales and that children wouldn't want to buy it.
Yeah.
And so they made less Louisa dolls and they did Isabella, who's the pretty flower sister.
Yeah.
And
But the market wants Luisa dolls.
they're flying
That's
off the
good.
shelves, and
Yeah.
the Isabella ones aren't selling as well.
Very good, because I saw the dolls at the toy shop, and Isabella obviously, but the Mirabel dolls, like they changed the design to look more stereotypically pretty, and was like,
They changed Mirabel?
yeah, her face is less round. It's like not Barbie doll proportions, but
No.
heading towards that direction.
Oh,
It's
that's
like,
interesting.
that's an interesting choice.
Because I thought Mirabel, I mean, I did look at the female representation, and I forget the name of the vain sister.
Isabel?
Isabel, yeah, no, not interested in her at all, and that was, stereotypical, this, that, and the other. But I did notice that Louisa, being very broad, very strong, was still very attractive, very pretty, and I really, really like Mirabelle.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You don't just chuck a pair of glasses and curl a girl's. Well, you do actually. You just chuck a pair of glasses on her and curl her hair, but she's delightful.
Then you take her glasses off and
oh yeah, that's right. What? But I thought she was perfectly made to be the exact sort of message that you want for your chicas who are growing up.
Absolutely agree. The character design work on Mirabelle was amazing. That's actually, I think, my favorite part of the movie. Just how she reacts, how she moves, how she looks. Her eyes during some of those songs, how she's glancing at the donkeys and stuff. It's like, oh my gosh, this stuff is so good. And I'm just a little bummed that in the merchandising reflects away from what makes her awesome.
Interesting what you guys say about what you say, William, about the psychological darkness of it, because I was picking that up because my nephew is nearly 5. And he's only been to the movies with me once, would you believe, despite having me as an auntie, and that was Peter Rabbit 2. But we're not here to talk about Peter Rabbit 2 and how brilliant that film was. But I do watch these things and I think, would Ezra like this? And will there be dark elements? And I did sort of think, I was anticipating, he and I haven't watched it together yet, I don't know how this is going to go, but I did sort of think, if he is to say, Auntie Sarah, why is she sad? Why doesn't she have a gift? I don't really know. I mean, short of spoilering the film, I don't know what to do with that in a way. You know what I mean? Because I don't want him to feel bummed out watching something that's about somebody who is sad about who they are for a time. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, but it's such a good... I totally know what you mean, but I think it's like with Inside Out, which is quite a complicated movie.
Oh, yes. We need to wait a few years for that one, but yes.
But I think with this one, it's such a beautiful message, which is, we're not our gifts, we're more than our gifts.
Yes.
And the most heartbreaking shot in that film is when the little gorgeous Mirabelle, the door disappears and she looks up at her grandmother with... it breaks my heart every time I see that. But it's hard to know what kids respond to, and I know that my niece and nephews sometimes have just burst into tears in moments in movies when we're not expecting it because they're really connecting with it.
And they're keyed into something else that maybe isn't the dark music or the werewolves or whatever.
Yeah.
I should just like to say, gentlemen, I started learning Spanish last year, and I decided with Encanto, because you can on Disney Plus, that I would watch it with the Spanish audio and English subtitles, because my Spanish isn't that good. And so I did, and I persevered with that, and it was a great thing to do. And I know that this is like how they make movies, and have done for ages, but I'm so impressed with the fact that in Spanish, because let's face it, the lips are still moving to English language, but the songs and everything rhyme, and they make sense, and everything's so well written to absolutely translate across various languages.
Wow, that's cool.
It was beautiful.
That's very cool.
And also, and we'll get to talking about this in West Side Story, the interesting thing about the use of Spanish language in the English version, do you know what I mean? Like in the English audio, they'd still say abuela, da-da-da-da-da. They didn't go grandma and have to really sort of anglicize everything for the audience. So I felt as though in the snippet that I watched in English before deciding to go Spanish, that's interesting. That's great that there is this sense that you will just have to flip and work out what these Spanish terms are, and it's implicit and all that sort of thing.
I think they did that in Coco really, really well.
True that.
And just reading responses from Latinx young people about, that's how I speak at home, mixing Spanish and English, and really, really good stuff.
I think this film as well is doing much better than people were expecting. At least when I first watched it, I was like, oh yeah, this is great, but nobody seemed to be talking about it, and I thought, oh okay, maybe it's not really hit the mark. But this movie is, we don't know what the streaming numbers are.
No.
It hasn't made heaps in the theatrical realm,
because of Omicron.
Yeah, but apparently the streaming is huge. Like it's really, if the music sales are anything to go by, it's doing very well.
Just one more thing before we leave Encanto. Did you guys see the short before Encanto?
Yes, we cried. Josh and I cried.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's on Disney Plus here if you want to search for Far From the Tree.
Does it come up automatically?
No.
Yeah, it's a separate short.
Oh,
on Disney
yeah, okay,
Plus.
no, I didn't.
When you're in the cinema and plays.
Okay.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's really, really nicely done. And What I keep wanting from Disney, I think last year I had such a good time with Arcane because they use computer animation in a way that you don't usually see, right? It's much more hand-drawn and painterly. And Far From the Tree is that style, except done with the Disney kind of flat cell shading. And it looks brilliant, and I want to see a feature film with this technology. Yeah, awesome stuff.
Nice. So, what do we reckon? Who wants to start with their thumbs?
All right, 2 thumbs up for me. Still not a huge fan of the music. Maybe I should revisit it. But everything else, the visuals, the story, the character design, top notch.
I agree. Big double thumbs up for me. It was a 2 thumbs up for me when I first saw it, but it's even more so. I think if it was a 4-star film when I first saw it, it's a 5-star film for me now. Having watched it twice. I watched it with my nephews and Nelson, and my niece watched it. She said to me, I said, "Do you want to watch the film?" And she's like, "No, I'm busy." And then she came in halfway through and she walked away. And then she said to me the next day, "Oh, good Jeremy, I didn't realize you were watching that movie. I would have wanted to watch it, but I came in halfway through and I didn't want to watch it halfway through."
How young is she?
She's 11 or 12.
Oh, okay.
And then she goes, "But I watched it this morning and I loved it."
Oh,
Nice.
So yeah, 2 thumbs up for me. Great time.
I'd go 2 thumbs up as well. I think it's beautiful. I think it's appropriate. I think it's timely. And interesting what you say about the music, because I can be quite critical of new music that I think is like generic or whatever. And I actually was conscious, particularly during the Louisa song, funnily enough, and I didn't realize that's gone on to be a hit. I was like, this is the first time I'm hearing this, and I'm actually really into it. So for me, with my terribly high standards and massive judgment, that's a good thing. So yeah, 2 thumbs up.
Nice. Well, let's move on to our third film, which is The French Dispatch. Sarah, would you like to give us a rundown of The French Dispatch?
Thank you, Jeremy. Yes. So, in fact, Wes Anderson returns with this beautiful. It's not a portmanteau film, but it is. Oh my gosh, it's so interesting. So, The French Dispatch is the name of the magazine that this film is constructed around, and it's based not at all loosely on the New Yorker magazine. And some of the personnages in this film are based not at all loosely on real New Yorker journalists from last century. So Wes Anderson's put together this gorgeous film. Oh, I'm giving away how I feel about it, but whatever. A gorgeous film that instead of being one sort of 90 or 120 minute narrative is a series, feels like a series of short films, but all related. And I thought it was a charming way of doing it, because you can imagine if you're reading a magazine, then you are reading in-depth articles, and they are all standalone pieces. And that's really the timbre, the tone of this film. It has a very starry cast, as most of Wes Anderson's films do. And I thought wonderful performances from regulars like Tilda Swinton and irregulars like Benicio del Toro, and a plethora of
Timothy
actors.
Chalamet. Yeah.
That's right. Timothy Chalamet, Léa Seydoux, the French actress, who is also to be seen in No Time to Die, the latest James Bond movie. So, yes, that is The French Dispatch. How did you all feel about that film?
William and I went and saw it together. So again, it was like a 10 a.m. on a Sunday, I think, because there just seems to be no time for lots of these movies. So we went to see it at the Rialto Cinema in Newmarket. I think there was like a couple of other people in the theatre. I loved it. I loved it from start to finish. I haven't loved a Wes Anderson film. Oh no, I lie. I loved Isle of Dogs, which was his last movie.
Yeah.
But he definitely can be. I don't want to say hit and miss. I think that's too negative. I think his style I'm not always in the mood for, and the pretentiousness of it doesn't always match the, like I didn't love Grand Budapest Hotel as much as some people did. But I loved this. Loved it.
Yeah, me too. Right there with you, Jeremy. I think we're just laughing throughout as well. It's a really funny movie.
Yes.
I guess, ostensibly all his movies are comedies, but this one, there's just these jokes and visual gags like scattered throughout.
Yes.
You can't go more than a minute without something funny happening. But even more surprising than that, and more surprising than, of course, the Wes Anderson-y of it all, or Wes Anderson-ness. I think some people called it not the best Wes Anderson movie, but the most Wes Anderson movie.
Nice. Yeah.
And it's like, you want to introduce someone to Wes Anderson? Probably don't start with this one.
Right.
This is so in your face. Every single shot has the 90-degree camera, the flat, mise en scène. Like, it is mise en scène, the movie.
Yes.
Everything in its place. But I was really surprised at how heartfelt a lot of the stories were. Like, every single, maybe not the Owen Wilson book, the cycling introduction, but the three main stories that make up the meat of the movie, there's always this emotional hook that you just don't expect, and they become really, really moving and melancholy and also quite sad in places. And this is in the midst of, for example, a caper where it suddenly turns into a bande dessinée style animated chase sequence featuring a circus strongman. Awesome use of tone and of this tonal shift. Found really, really surprising. Did not see that coming.
A real love letter to France, obviously, and I think that most of Wes Anderson's films belie his love of everything francophone and francophile. But I'm just charmed by as you say about the details. Oh my gosh! If anything, I wanted to be able to pause it so that I could look for longer at a particular frame.
Yeah.
And I'm always enchanted by clevernesses, like the fact that the film is set in the town of Ennui-sur-Blasey, which is so gorgeous because of the naming conventions of French towns that are sur, on, usually a river or something, and ennui being boredom, and blasé being blasé. I mean, just like so fleeting. I really liked that this didn't, as chock-a-block as it is, with all of these clever little details and witticisms, it isn't actually heavy-handed. So he doesn't go, ennui sur blasé, get it? And he doesn't flip in subtitle it so that we get it. It's like you either get it or you don't get it, and it's okay if not, and you move on. So I found it very, very charmant. How you say, charming, and I intoxicating, in fact, and absolutely the right time in the pandemic and in Aotearoa and in my life to watch something diverting. That I love things that transport me back several decades to what you consider. You know how it is when you look back at the past and you think, oh, the 1960s, that would have been a good time, or the 1940s, or whatever. Oh, if we'd lived then, everything would have been the halcyon days. And of course, the people who lived then were going, 1880, gosh, if I'd lived back then, that would have been the good times. So
Sounds like the plot to a Woody Allen movie.
Yes, exactly, like Midnight in Paris,
and also Last Night in Soho has
Absolutely.
a similar plot.
And Midnight in Paris was similarly intoxicating for me because I was full of the whole, oh my gosh, if only I could go back and hang out with Ernest Hemingway. And then it's like, nah, life still would have had its hard bits then as well.
How did you guys feel about the three main stories? Was there a particular favourite?
My thinking before I get to that is that I think I said this to you, William, when we finished the film. I'm not always a fan of those type of movies. Like, I only got halfway through that Coen Brothers one. The
Buster Scruggs?
Yeah, not because I wasn't enjoying it, but because I just was like, I watched three stories, and maybe I watched the other four another day, and I never have watched it another day. But I think the interweaving of the Bill Murray character and kind of that being the central thread I was so captured by it.
That was the book ending, obviously, wasn't it?
It was through the whole thing, because he would go to the next writer between the stories.
Sure. But that's the whole point of its being a magazine and his being the editor-in-chief, I suppose, right? Which does tie it together nicely.
You knew he was going to die, and like it was...
And he was basically the world's best and nicest editor.
So great.
What they say in the film, like coddling his writers.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I felt that also added to that was the fact that each of the stories had their place and they all kind of had their corner. And I couldn't pick which one I preferred more than the other. I felt they were all equally offering of something quite different, but tonally very connected. And I sort of thought by the time you get to the third one, the Jeffrey Wright story, I was like, this better live up to the first two, because the first two are brilliant. Which, interestingly, I think of another movie where that didn't happen was the Sin City sequel, Dame to Kill For. First two stories enjoyable, third story kind of let the whole movie down.
Right.
But no, I loved all three. I thought
You
they were
loved the
fantastic.
cuisine one,
Yeah,
William, didn't you?
That one hit me really hard.
The Jeffrey Wright
Well,
one.
when Jeffrey Wright like stops the movie dead and kind of, I think Liev Schreiber asks him just a offhanded question. He starts talking about the power of restaurants and like why it's so important being, and I guess this whole movie is about, you know, the foreign experience in France,
Yes.
right? Since they're all Americans.
Yes, they're all
transported-
expats, aren't they? Yeah.
And talking about why food and restaurants are so important. And to me, it just sounded like Wes Anderson, like, fully projecting onto his characters. 'Cause doesn't he live in Paris right now? And I guess he just hangs around Parisian cafes, like,
It's
writing
probable,
movies.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was wonderful. And then, of course, the movie, that segment ends with Stephen Park, his chef character, having this big revelation about like the forbidden flavor, which is such a random and weird way to finish the segment.
That's right.
It's like, this is so strangely moving. Like, this is a man he's seen it all.
Yeah.
He's the best in this field, and yet the only thing that eludes him is something that will kill him.
Right.
Man, that's great.
And Stephen Park, I mean, I'm much more simplistic than you, William, because I just like the fact that his name was Chef or Lieutenant Nescaffier. Nescaffier. Oh, again, such a small detail that is just like, oh, charming.
The cast is incredible. Willem Dafoe just sort of in this small part in the cage, and Saoirse Ronan being the woman and the prostitute and that story, and everybody was just brilliant.
Schwartzman just appearing to draw a chicken or a turkey on his
Yeah,
hand.
that's right. I thought this was a better performance from Frances McDormand than the new Macbeth movie. I enjoyed her much more in this than I did in Macbeth.
Yeah.
Like she was fine in Macbeth, but I actually felt her doing something different in the
Yes,
first.
yes, yes.
Cool.
That wonderful scene where she's like, "Why am I crying?" and then they realize they're being tear gassed. It's just something about that was just brilliant. This is a big 2 thumbs up from me.
Same here.
Same here.
Oh, easy. Right, should we move on to House of Gucci?
Yes.
I think, Sarah, you're going to tell us House of
I
Gucci.
am. So I'm crossing the border into Italia. Oh my gosh. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have not seen House of Gucci, you might be wishing that you do, because it does star the most incredible Lady Gaga in the main role as Patrizia Reggiani, a working class secretary who marries into the House of Gucci by marrying Maurizio Gucci, the son of the head of the Gucci empire, played by Adam Driver, whom I also think of as a fabulous actor who can do no wrong whatsoever. So this follows their marriage and their love affair, and it is not a spoiler to tell you that things turn sour and Patrizia Reggiani takes a hit out on her husband. It's not a spoiler because A, the story is real life, and B, it happens at the very beginning of the movie. But House of Gucci, which is directed by Ridley Scott, for I don't know which reasons, it makes everybody speak like this through the whole film. For me personally, Patrizia Reggiani, so Lady Gaga is of Italian descent, and she, I think, pulls it off.
Oh.
I actually think so.
I disagree. She sounds Eastern European through half this movie.
To me, she retains an authenticity such that I believed in her character. But Al Pacino, Italian descent, Jeremy Irons, not Italian whatsoever, and does make no effort whatsoever to maintain his accent, and Jared Leto. And I've looked him up. I don't know. I don't think Leto is an Italian descent, but everybody else just feels like they're in a pantomime.
Especially Al Pacino, which is hilarious.
Oh my gosh. But some people
Because
like
he's-
Al Pacino.
I liked him.
He's acted in Italian before.
Yeah.
Oh my
It's like-
gosh. So, yeah. So House of Gucci, what a poisoned chalice, double-edged sword, 2 sides of a coin. Yes.
I'm just going to go out there and say, and this might be contentious amongst you lot, I don't know, but I think Jared Leto is amazing in this movie.
What sort of amazing? What sort of amazing? Like,
The
so bad
exact-
it's good amazing?
Yes, the exact camp kitsch that this movie needs. And every time he appears and every time he acts opposite Gaga or Irons, I think it elevates their performances because they become more cartoonish to match him. And I was like, yes, this is the movie I've been waiting for. Otherwise, there was no energy. Apart from, every time Jared Leto was off screen, the audience was shouting, "Where's Jared Leto?"
Sure.
He is a cartoonish monster. Also, his accent, I think, borders on hate crime in places.
That's interesting.
It's real bad.
He turned up on set in full makeup and went up to Al Pacino and went, "Papa!" And Al Pacino was like, "Who is this guy?"
Yeah.
And he kept just calling him Papa. And then it was sort of maybe half an hour later, someone said, "That's Jared Leto." And he's like, "Oh, son!"
I'm prepared to engage with this guy. Honestly, I think that Jared Leto, say what you like, will win the Oscar for most acting.
I'm the opposite of you, William, because I loved I actually had a really good time in this movie, except for when Jared Leto was on the screen. When he first arrived, I was like, "What is going on?" And then it just kept happening, and he was so over the top. I felt like he was out of an Austin Powers film.
Yes.
And I just wasn't enjoying it. I actually quite enjoyed Al Pacino. And you know how much I love Lady Gaga. I thought I thought her and Adam Driver together were just fantastic.
Same.
And I was watching an interview with her yesterday where she said that he had this incredible stillness, which is what his character was. And her character was flitting around the whole time. And she described her journey as a... She embodied 3 different animals throughout the journey. So the first was like a house cat, like playful, sexy. All of them were like scavengers and just trying to survive.
Yeah.
Third one was a fox who was kind of hunting for food but still quite playful. And then the final one, after she gets served papers, there's a panther. And apparently a panther cries after kills and sex and things like that. So I thought she was fantastic. And her accent for me was fine. Apparently she trained for 6 months and she stayed in accent for the entire film. And, I think, was I talking to you about this, Sarah, about how she was exhausted by the end of the film? Or maybe it was someone else. I can't remember.
You mentioned it, that she has acknowledged from working with other good actors that she needs to find boundaries.
Yeah, find a healthier way to work. Because she said she gets into the shoot and she's just like a shell of herself.
She's given it everything.
But I think she's she's trained from the Lee Strasberg Institute, Stanislavski method acting. I just don't think there's very many method actors anymore out there in Hollywood. It's not very vogue. And
apart from Jared Leto,
I don't know.
That's not method.
That Papa story is amazing.
The what story?
Papa.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting thing. I mean, I agree with Jeremy and not so much you, William, with regard to Patrizia Reggiani's performance, because it's interesting to me that Gaga plays a character who is a bright, attractive, well-meaning working class girl who works hard, because she works through this film. She doesn't just marry Gucci and then sit around, right? She ingratiates herself into the family business, or tries to. And
she makes the decisions that her husband is kind of
exactly
about.
And so if you draw a parallel with the way that Gaga has come up in the world, she works blimmin' hard in order to find that sort of success. So it's interesting you say method acting, Jeremy, but I feel as though perhaps with Gaga there is so much about this character that she can identify with, and I don't mean that unkindly at all. I don't think that she's mercenary, I don't think she's greedy, I don't think she's, a social climber or any of that stuff at all. But that to me gave her character authenticity, even though it was a larger than life, big hair, big earrings, hey, you're annoying me, Signor Gucci, kind of character.
I like Gaga fine in this. I think the character is well written, and I think she brings a lot to the table. I just thought her accent was all over the place, that's all. It did not ring true to, I guess, none of the accents meshed together, which just made it a hodgepodge. It reminded me somewhat strangely of Watto from Star Wars Episode 1. the flying Italian racial stereotypes. Like, hey, Anakin, what are you doing?
Only man.
Yeah. Not right.
Interestingly, structurally similar in some ways to his other film, which was fantastic, The Last Duel, which I saw last year, which starts with the duel, the clashing of the swords, or whatever it is, they don't have swords today, the pikes, and then it cuts back. And this same thing, like you mentioned, Sarah, it opens with Gucci, what's his
just
first
before
name?
Maurizio's assassination.
Final moments,
and
then it cuts back. So he made these movies. I think he talked to Adam Driver on the set of The Last Duel, said, I've got this role for you. So he was kind of already getting ready to film this. They also filmed it in the height of the pandemic, which is interesting. It'd be interesting to know how they got some of those group shots and things like that.
The other thing, sorry to interrupt you, but the other thing that, that's interesting for Ridley, The Last Duel has his sort of trademark bluey grey tint, which it should have because it's set in the depths of winter in, not medieval, but, I'm terrible with my history, but ye olden daisies, right? And it's horrible and it's cold and it's, and that's appropriate. And it's such a bum that he goes then to Rome and to Tuscany and Milan and still has that slightly muted tone going on, which is appropriate for the story because you're dealing with a story of love gone sour. But it's a shame because there's so much to exploit in that natural sort of arena.
And the movie's about high fashion.
Yes,
It's
yes.
like, show me... And of course, when the movie does become colourful, like Gaga's bright red, like it really, really stands out.
Yeah.
Right. Well, let's go around and do thumbs. For me, it's a one thumb.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Oh, no, it's not that funny. It's not that funny. It's got to be one thumb. I mean, I still tell people they ought to see it. I still say if you're interested, you should totally go. It's just you'll find it a little bit laggy and you'll find maybe some of the performances a little bit over the top, and yet it's still entertaining and worth seeing. So I guess but with all those caveats. So I guess I have to go 1 star. Not 1 star, heck no, 1 thumb on it.
I think that's fair, a little bit laggy. I would go 1 thumb down. Basically, I thought the movie worked, and maybe I'm in the extreme minority. I thought the movie worked best when there was just that manic energy, that go for broke Jared Leto-ness.
Sure.
And everything else just felt, I mean, obviously it was opera-inspired, melodrama or that, but it was just really sodden and it dragged.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even that long.
Yeah, that's right. It just felt long.
Yes, that is poor filmmaking, and that is unfortunate given you've got the sort of story that you've got, and as you say, the quite vibrant performances. Yeah.
So it was all right.
I guess we're both, whether we've thumbed it up or thumbed it down or had a different perspective, it's really, it's a mixture of tone and a mixture of what the film's trying to do. We're both we're all falling on different sides of the fence, aren't we? We wanted the movie to be, and I think that's probably indicative of the movie not kind of quite knowing exactly what it's trying to do.
Possibly, yeah.
All right, let's move on to our 5th film of our discussion, The Matrix Resurrections, which came out, I think, was it Boxing Day or Christmas Day or something like that? So The Matrix Resurrections is the 4th Matrix film, directed by Lana Wachowski, one half of the Wachowski siblings. They made the first 3 films back in 1999 and the early 2000s, and we talked about the first Matrix in a previous episode last year. Fantastic film. I think it's fair to say the sequels were not as good, and definitely mixed degrees of passion that people feel towards those movies. So skip forward, was it 10 years, 20 years, something like that, and we've got a new movie, and lo and behold, Neo, played by Keanu Reeves, is back in the film, having died at the end of the 3rd one. He's in a world that is seemingly familiar, but also kind of we're not clear how it connects, where he's alive. He's a successful game developer. He's developed 3 games called The Matrix and its sequels. And Warner Brothers, the owner of their company, is demanding they make a 4th game.
I love the meta-ness of that.
And they'll do it with or without Neo and his boss, who I don't want to give any spoilers there. And what ensues is him questioning his sanity, because characters from his own game start to interact with him, like Morpheus and Trinity. Well, actually, Trinity's in it, isn't she? She's a married woman with a different name.
Tiffany. And
actually, we get glimpses of them in mirrors where they're not quite them. They've got different skins and things. So something strange is afoot, and how and if and why and when and will it connect with the previous films is all part of the ride. I don't know. Is it? Can we milk any other key plot points without spoiling anything out of that?
I don't think we need to. People will go if they want to.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say I went to this film with multiple generations of my family, so my parents and my siblings and my nephew.
All of whom had seen the original Matrix?
Yeah. And there was varying responses. Some people had a great time and loved it. Some people thought it was the dumbest thing they've ever seen. And I fall somewhere in the middle. I kind of enjoyed myself, but it was so stupid.
I had a great time and loved it, while still thinking that it wasn't a perfect film. But I definitely had a great time. But I don't know. I mean, maybe nostalgia plays a large part in that. The fact that Neo and Trinity are still delightful. I mean, it was just so lovely to be with them again. And also, I did love all of the meta-ness. Like, when there's, this is not a spoiler, but when there's the brainstorming montage of the folks at Warner Brothers coming up with new ideas.
I think that is the best scene in the movie.
It's fantastic.
One word, bullet time.
That's true,
I
sir.
absolutely loved it. And I can't wait for someone to pop just that scene on the internet so I can rewatch it a million times.
Did you watch the cut scene at the end of the credits?
No.
It's a cut scene from that scene, and it's really dumb. We waited till the end of the credits. We're like, oh, that was dumb. I can't remember what happens, but
Right.
it's some bit.
But, I mean, that whole scene is like, so what do people want out of Matrix 4? It's like, to me, Matrix is about this, Matrix is about that. This movie is I mean, super divisive, and understandably so. I don't think it's the Matrix sequel that anyone wanted. But obviously, like, it really struck a chord with some people. One of my favorite podcasts, the Filmcast, one of their hosts named this as his favorite movie of 2021. Like, oh my goodness.
Wow, way.
Yeah.
But the Wachowski stuff does that, right? Like, I was talking to my friends yesterday, and they were raving to me about Speed Racer. And William, you've mentioned a lot about Speed Racer, and I still haven't seen it. They were like, it's amazing, and one of those same friends, she said, look, I also went and saw Jupiter Ascending and had a great time, and then we tried to rewatch it, and we couldn't get through it.
No.
And I had a great time in Jupiter Ascending, but it was terrible in so many ways. I love Cloud Atlas, but it's really problematic with a lot of its makeup and various races.
No, they do it again in Matrix Resurrections. Like, what is the Wachowskis' predilection to bad old age makeup?
Yes. It's really hard to talk about this movie without spoiling things, isn't it? Because there are some really good surprises. And I think my true criticisms, and I don't mean that in a negative way, my just critiques of the film, perhaps, are in that second half of the movie where we'd have to give away some key plot points.
I agree with that, Jeremy. I think I was actually really amused and entertained by what they were doing with the video game meta-ness.
Yeah, same.
So much of that stuff is so on the nose that it's not just thumbing your nose at Warner Brothers and the authority, right? It's giving them, like, flipping the bird full on, come at me, bro.
Yeah.
And for a huge commercial blockbuster to do this and have such authorial, authorship.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Admirable, yeah.
And then the second half just tries to have its cake and eat it too.
That's the exact phrase I'm thinking, have its cake and eat it too. I was quite happy with that because it was so ridiculous already. There is some problematic stuff in that second half, like the final action sequence, the way that the villains are trying to destroy them. I don't want to say it without spoilering, but just in terms of, like, if the film is dealing with suicide ideation, it's dealing with mental health, and then you've got
some inappropriate choices.
Skip forward 10 seconds, team, if you haven't seen it, but people falling out of windows.
Yes.
And it's kind of like, oh, this is interesting, and some of the people in our group did not like it.
No.
I thought that was a really, really beautiful metaphor for what the internet does to people, especially in the age of January 6th, the insurrection, and how it. I mean, for me, it was the metaphor of your normal average bloke, like, just being completely radicalized by the swarm, that idea of this groupthink that turns people into mindless
lemmings.
Yeah, basically.
That's interesting. I guess, and again, viewers, if you skip forward 10 seconds, you've probably
You're back.
But I think that image, and I'm going to talk, cryptically again. That image,
it's disturbing.
It's a disturbing image, and I personally was, like, fine with it. But there were people in our group who have struggled with suicide ideation, and that was quite a confronting image. But
I thought the climax was just okay. So basically, first half meta, blah blah blah, rediscovering the world, loved it. And then what we might call, I guess, Act 2, 2.5. I don't know. Sort of after the halfway point, then there's that bit that goes just traditional sci-fi kind of, we've got to go on a quest. Buh, who cares? None of that's interesting to me at all. But then the ending, actually, despite the unsavouriness of some of the choices, perhaps, that was a very exciting sort of climax. So again, I would find this film quite difficult to quantify in terms of stars or thumbs or whatever, because there's definitely bits in it that didn't do anything for me, but there was so much that totally did that I guess overrides my experience of it, which is why I came out at the end going, had a blimmin' good time, you know?
I think for me, a large reason of why I found the second half so dispiriting was the action was just really poorly done. Like you know, say what you will about Matrix 2 and 3. I mean, they are objectively bad movies. But the action and the sequences in there, I mean, they are still, I would say, unsurpassed to this day. Some of the ideas in 2 and 3, the highway chase, the Smith versus Neo fight with the water, like, exploding outwards, like, that's what I think you go into a Matrix movie wanting. And maybe it was intentional, maybe it wasn't. It just felt like everything was really, really half-baked, right? The action was pretty boring. The hand-to-hand stuff was shot in the generic, over-the-shoulder, shaky cam. Even the new effects, the time messing around and Neo's new powers just seemed super lame.
Which, by the way, made no sense.
Yeah.
They didn't really explain all that stuff, and it was just like, okay, we're just going to go along with lots of new things appearing in the story with no real setup.
Because we're just so happy to see you again.
Yeah. And we're in the Matrix, anything can happen in the
That's
Matrix.
exactly right. That's exactly right.
But the disappointing thing is, I think a lot of the new elements are actually really interesting. I like new Morpheus. What was it? Abdul Martin II. I think he does a great job.
Yes,
and he has
same.
lots of swag, and it's like,
Yes.
okay, I'm into it. But then he has nothing to do. Like, it's just... And it keeps repeating again and again and again. Meanwhile, just drawing from that well of nostalgia. I mean, this is... we've had so many, you know, quote-unquote legacy sequels recently. Ghostbusters Afterlife was awful. I mean, it was Force Awakens, Jurassic World, things that play off our nostalgia for stuff from the past, our love for stuff from the past. And I think this is really the one that features the most footage from the original Matrix
Sure,
movies
Yeah,
sure.
true.
on
It's all
screen.
through.
That's
It's
true, actually.
explicitly there.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting choice.
Did you know, spotted trivia, and this is not a spoiler particularly, to say that Tiffany's character has a husband and kids. The husband is played by... it's not a spoiler, is it? To
No,
say
I don't
that
think so.
he's played by...
Her real husband?
No,
the director of John Wick.
Keanu's stunt double from the original Matrix films,
Chad Straczynski?
who went on to make the John Wick's films.
Right. Well, you
Yeah.
know that the image of Neo in the reflections is
Yeah.
Carrie Moss's real husband.
Oh.
Yeah. And interesting, William, you talk about Morpheus not really doing anything. I mean, that's my problem with the original films as well, is that he kind of is the damsel in distress in the first movie after sort of activating Neo. And then he doesn't really do anything for 2 films. I always think that Morpheus should have died in the second movie instead of him saving Trinity. That he would have had this choice and he actually had to choose to let Morpheus die. Like that would have been a more compelling drama for me. And interestingly, one of my colleagues who watched this 4th movie said, this movie has no drama at all. There's no stakes or anything. Which I was like, okay, interesting. Yeah. Right, let's give what's our rankings, thumb rankings.
I'm gonna
tricky.
go 2 thumbs.
Wow.
No, seriously, I'm gonna
Awesome.
go 2 thumbs because, as I mentioned, the bits that were meh are so far overshadowed by all of the joy. So the 2 thumbs are my level of enjoyment, not necessarily how good the film was, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
And I just thoroughly enjoyed being with them again, but being with them contemporarily, like grown-up Keanu, grown-up Neo, and all that stuff. Yeah. You're making me want to see it again, which is ridiculous.
Awesome. I would say, yeah, probably one thumb down for me.
Wait, what, is that one up? Oh,
one
no,
down.
just one down.
Just one down. Yeah, I love movies like 22 Jump Street and Spaceballs and Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Like these movies which talk about what the franchise means to them.
Yeah.
Or franchise in terms of Spaceballs being Star Wars, and playing with the idea like we are making one of these movies in front of you right now. So the first,
which Scream does as well.
Scream, yeah, absolutely.
I was going to bring up
Scream.
because the new Scream is
all that,
and it is all exactly what you're talking
but
about.
of course, Scream 2
Awakens,
was let's make a movie of the thing and the Dar and the whatnot. So yeah.
And I just wanted more of that. I would be fine if they were stuck in that boardroom all day talking about. So how can we make Matrix 4 really sing?
Yeah.
I would be okay if it was like a Before Sunset with Thomas and Tiffany. I think that would have been awesome. But it's not either of those. Instead, it just becomes kind of a weak reboot / remake of Matrix 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
Drawing elements from each of them. Done in a way that just does not have the visual pizzazz. And I don't know if that's because the creators behind it were just tired. And I know they had to refilm a lot of it because of COVID and Germany. But it just came off as really low energy, low effort, unfortunately.
Ooh, I think for me, I've seen multiple Wachowski projects now. Sense8 being one I was kind of keen on and then gave up on. Cloud Atlas, so problematic, but still enjoy it. Jupiter Ascending being a mess, but kind of having a good time. So I sort of went into this movie with a very, I think, on point expectations. And so for me, my enjoyment is a thumbs up, but I'm going to give the film a thumbs down because I think it was so many things that were so silly.
I feel crazy now. Maybe I should go one thumb up. Maybe I've got the wrong end of the stick on this rating system.
Yeah, stick with it. I think it's fine. I think this film demands a response either way.
There's people out there who love and adore this movie.
Yeah.
And then there's other people who say like it's a complete disaster beginning to end.
Yeah. Right, let's move on to our sixth film, The Power of the Dog.
That's
I think
correct.
We've landed on. Mm-hmm. So I'll give a summary of this. So The Power of the Dog is the new film by Jane Campion, New Zealand filmmaker.
Her first movie in so long.
Set here or just generally?
Generally.
Yeah, because her last project was The Girl at the Top of the Lake.
And then before that, also Bright Star?
Yeah, Bright Star's fantastic. So this film follows, I guess, a family, a makeshift family with Jesse Plemons and his brother, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, sort of ranchers, I believe.
Yeah.
And they find themselves in an area where Jesse Plemons starts a relationship with Kirsten Dunst, his real-life wife. And she runs a restaurant with her son. I believe she lost her husband. He died. She's a widow. And the young boy, he was a young man. He's preparing to go to university. He's in terms of masculinity, he's not a typical cowboy. He makes paper flowers, is relatively introspective, enjoys studying, and the Benedict Cumberbatch character is a pretty harsh human being. And when Jesse Plemons and Kirsten Dunst they get married in the film, he becomes her brother-in-law and quite a taunting, abusive force. And so the film is really about these tensions between Kirsten Dunst and Benedict Cumberbatch. Benedict Cumberbatch is quite horrible to the young boy, so there's sort of a tension there. And Jesse Plemons with his brother, there's tension there as well. So it's a film that you don't quite know where it's going, but it's winding up. You know that something's going to happen, and it's a real return to form for Jane Campion.
Boy, howdy, does something happen?
Yeah. But
sorry, I should say, boy, howdy.
So it's set in Montana, but it's filmed in Central Otago, Aotearoa, New Zealand.
They came and filmed during the pandemic.
That's correct.
Yeah, famously we're here during the lockdown. There's been interviews with Kirsten Dunst and Jesse Plemons staying in a hotel with their son or child or...
And Cumberbatch, like just staying around the New Zealand sites for quite a while.
And it's worth saying that the nephew is played by Kobe Smith McPhee, who is an extraordinary looking young man who's grown into an extraordinary looking, by extraordinary I do not mean classically handsome, but he's very gangly and angular, and far out his performance was extraordinary.
So is he a child star?
He is a child star.
He's been in a bunch of YA and like kid fare.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
I
he's
feel like,
fantastic.
was he in Spy Kids and all those?
No.
No, okay. In that case, forget that. But yeah, so he's kind of a kid that's grown up and is now putting out this performance for which he was nominated. Did he win the Golden Globe? I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
But nominated for Best Supporting Actor, absolutely appropriately. And I mean, I think what's so magnificent, and you spoke eloquently, Jeremy, about the tension that underlies this whole film, is, in a way, everybody plays their character quite quietly, including Benedict Cumberbatch, who only occasionally raises his voice, but I just think is such a superb actor that he is able to be sinister and threatening with a sneer or a look or a, you know, the smallest, a posture, the smallest of moves. And so all of them, it's quite a quiet film, isn't it? But it's a deadly film, absolutely.
It's really interesting to see Jane Campion kind of flex her muscles. I haven't seen a film like this from her that is so cohesive since probably The Piano, because I think Bright Star is just it's a love story. It's a wonderful film. Top of the Lake is I've got issues with both of those seasons. It's messy, but it's
season 2 I couldn't get through.
I watched season 2 at like a screening where you did.
Yes, I did. Was it in the film festival?
And she was there. Jane Campion was there, and we watched. It started at 2 p.m. I think. We watched the first 2 hours, had a break, watched the next 2 hours, had a break, watched the final 2 hours. And I remember getting to the end of the 4th hour, which was dinner time, going to get some food and thinking, I'm loving this. Every hour of this is like amazing. And then the moment the 5th hour starts, like too many coincidences and just collapsed in and of itself. And I just thought, oh, you kind of...
It was those narrative letdowns that happen sometimes in really fantastic, like, Killings or Mayor of Easttowns or whatever, when all of a sudden they've got to find their ending. And there are contrivances or...
Game of Thrones.
Just, you know... And this film, actually, not like that. Based on a short story or a novel?
I think it's a novel.
A novel.
Right.
So the narrative is all... the narrative's all written out and brilliant. And therefore, I don't mean all she has to do is, but all she has to do is cast amazing people, exercise the restraint that actually she's very good at, and not cast Peter Mullen. Because he's a little bit of a big actor. He was in your Top of the Lakes. I think he was in the first season, and he's a bit big.
Right.
So instead you get your Cumberbatch in.
Yeah.
I think watching this movie was such an interesting experience for me. I guess through the first hour, I was not really vibing with it. I'll just say that I did watch this on Netflix. I think, Sarah,
I saw it in the cinema, which I'm glad of.
I watched it on Netflix, but I watched it on my reasonably large TV, sort of lights low, by myself, no interruptions.
Great.
Turn my phone off.
So near as damn it, the Rialto Cinema 7 experience.
Pretty much. Except for I didn't have sticky feet on the ground.
No, that's right.
Popcorn in my hair.
Yeah.
So I'll just go ahead and say I was actually getting a little bored through the first half of the movie. I felt like I got what the movie was getting at, which was these long, almost distended scenes of not much happening to get you in that feeling.
Yes.
Right. And there are some of those sequences which are extraordinary, especially a scene where Kirsten Dunst has to play the piano.
Oh, it's
and it
amazing.
Is the most tense I've been. I can't even remember. Maybe what, like oh gosh, what was that movie? Park Chan-wook, The Handmaiden. I think had one of those scenes where it was like, oh my gosh, where's this going?
Yeah.
Just this sense of foreboding and tension, and there's no threat of violence.
No,
there's nothing, but something really bad is about to happen.
Yeah.
Just ooh.
I think Tarantino talks about that in regards to, he talks about how happy he was with the ranch sequence in his film.
In Once Upon a Time
in Hollywood.
Yes.
He said there's a difference between tension and terror.
True.
Because he also talks about it in relation to the ending of Joker.
Yes.
Tension is you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Terror is you think you know exactly what's going to happen and you don't want to see it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's quite the power of the dog, but I think there's an element of that. Like, you equally, you know something's going to happen and you're not quite sure, but also you know that one of these characters is potentially not in a safe space, and it's very likely Kirsten Dunst, and she's kind of a wonderful character.
I think my big comparison would be, you've made the comparison. My big response to that would be that in the ranch scene in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which you're absolutely right, tension, ratcheting, and then amounting to nothing, he might argue QT might argue, oh, but it does lead up to tension by the end of the film. But for me, I had real problems with the pacing, and therefore got to the end of that ranch scene, and it went like that, and I went, not big, not clever. Whereas Jane manages to maintain the tension through multiple tiny mini aggressions, microaggressions in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like Keep Playing is a microaggression.
That's
Whatever it might be.
the most aggressive banjo since Deliverance.
Absolute nice. So small, otherwise innocuous things. You're absolutely right. Within the context, tension to an extraordinary, again, low-key ending that is actually enormously powerful.
So with stuff like that, I felt like, especially in the first hour of the movie, like some of those scenes did play out that way, and some scenes just felt really, really long and pointless.
Right.
And like, again, going back to what I said about Matrix, like low energy and not doing anything really for either tone nor narrative.
Right.
But then once you get to the final 15 minutes of the movie, it's like, oh my, like I'm Sherlock Holmes and then all the pieces are in front of me.
Right.
And finally I understand retrospectively why those scenes were there.
Yes, right. So in deduction or induction, which way? You're looking back and going, oh, I see now why those actually feel like powerful scenes. Got you.
I love
Nice.
that. I love that. And Sarah and I went and saw a film this week, Nightmare Alley, and I had a real strong sense, didn't I? There was a certain part of that movie that
You were like, this?
Why is this here? This has to come back into it, and then it does come back into it in multiple ways. It's very satisfying.
Yes.
But it's definitely that thing of like, with a good filmmaker, you can trust that they're gonna be doing
that everything
the
has
things.
its purpose.
Yeah,
that's right.
I guess we so often watch movies where that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So you sometimes are like, I'm not sure if this is going to land. And with Jane Campion, some of her previous stuff hasn't landed, or she's brought in things to solve a situation kind of last minute. Interesting connection as well between QT and JC.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, no. Jane Campion and Quentin Tarantino is that when he saw Bright Star, he wrote a letter of just absolute adoration for that film and delivered it to Jane Campion. So there's a lovely connection there.
I suspect he just fancied Abby Cornish.
Oh my god. Haven't seen her for a while.
No, quite rightly.
Right.
Let's move on.
Right. Big two thumbs from me.
Same here,
Yeah.
2 thumbs.
2 thumbs from me, although I would say maybe I appreciate what the movie does more than I liked it.
Right.
But holy cow, that ending, it reminded me a lot of The Green Knight, where throughout The Green Knight, and this is one of my favorite movies from last year, I was like, oh, this is really dragging, and yeah, it's pretty, but where's this going? And then when you get to the ending, it's like, geez, you're a genius. So a very, very similar vibe. So again, I appreciate it and respect it more than I like it, but yeah, 2 thumbs.
Cool.
Nice.
That ending is so good.
Okay, well, let's move on to our 7th and final film of our 7 films from summer for our 70th episode. And just to carry on the sibilance, let's talk West Side Story.
Nice.
William, over to you.
All right.
William, over to you.
Super.
I'll just carry on with what we were saying, Sarah. Could it be? Yes, it could. Something's coming. Something good. Maybe tonight.
Woohoo!
West Side Story is Steven Spielberg's love letter / remake to the original Bernstein-Sondheim show, West Side Story. I mean, obviously, a lot of people know it from the 61 version, the film version, which is, I think, a masterpiece.
Yes.
But the new Steven Spielberg version does a lot of modern flourishes, which really, I think, tightens up that age-old story that's kind of a rip-off of Romeo and Juliet, of the Sharks and the Jets, these dueling teen gangs in New York in the 1950s while everything is in turmoil. So the Polish, I guess, of sorts, versus the Puerto Ricans, and the central love story between one of the Jets, Tony, and the sister of one of the Sharks, Maria, and how that escalates into gang war.
Nice. I think it's fair to say that Tony Kushner, who wrote the screenplay, also went back to the original book, the original musical before the film, and the 1961 film to draw from and bring, and also the revival. I think he sort of wove together a range
Three
of
different source materials.
Yeah, quite a few different
interesting.
source materials,
Yeah.
and to produce this film, and Steven Spielberg, like, clearly wanting to make a musical forever.
And clearly also wanting to make this musical specifically.
Yeah, I think about the opening of Temple of Doom and the musical sequence of that. Carry on.
So if you're going to make a musical, if you're Steven Spielberg and you're late-ish in your career and you haven't made one and you're going to make one, and I know this is going to sound unfair, and this is an original thought coming straight out of my head, but I kind of feel as though if you choose a musical, and particularly one that has a film version already, then you've got this wonderful opportunity to either say, great, I love what they did in, what was it, 47? No.
61.
Sorry, 61. I love what they did in 61, so I'm going to extract the America scene, and instead of doing it in a rooftop car park, I'm going to do it out in the streets. And similarly to go, okay, I see what they did with Be Cool, but I'm actually going to put it somewhere else. I feel as though a lot of the work had been done for him, if you get what I mean, because he has a choice. Either to go, I'm just going to replicate I Feel Pretty, or I'm going to change it ever so slightly. Maybe this feels like a simplistic thing to say, but this is not as original, obviously, as something like In the Heights or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, I kind of think, how can you go wrong, in a way? Do you know what I mean? I mean, arguably you can make funny choices, but I don't know that he did.
Oh, I hear what you're saying, but I thought he did a spectacular job, and that what a huge risk to remake one of the greatest musical films of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And he took it, and I loved the way that he changed those sequences so that it was something different. And he also fixed certain parts of the story from my perspective. Some things that just, for me, never really worked in that original film. Like the pacing is sort of a little bit clunky. The scenes don't always feel as fun as the musical numbers. And also, there are things now that have dated that they needed to change as well. And I thought the team, is clearly a huge collaborative effort, did an amazing job. The film looks phenomenal. I don't know how they filmed this.
I think it looks phenomenal until you see some of the CGI, which I think doesn't look that great.
Where's the CGI?
Yeah, well,
A lot of the background stuff, and it's really
As
obvious.
in the buildings.
Yeah,
right.
it's really obvious in the end credits when you
Yes.
see the CG recreations of New York. It's like, oh yeah, these shadows. It still doesn't look quite right.
Right.
Yeah. But then again, in the 61 version, it was very clearly matte painted.
Yeah.
It's
Yes,
like-
yes. Well, what did you think, though, of the lighting or the tint that Spielberg puts?
Oh, interesting.
Because it, again, is that almost Ridley Scottian bluey grey.
There were a lot of lens flares.
Was it to
yeah,
evoke 1960s? Was that the intention?
I don't know. I mean, it wasn't quite as Technicolor, obviously.
Although, I mean, it was significantly more colourful and vibrant than the 61 version.
Yeah.
Like, they costumed the characters in a way that really, burst from the screen.
That's true.
But
That's true.
this was filmed on film, right? So it wasn't
Oh,
digital.
wow.
Yeah, so...
You can tell as well. I loved it. I thought the choice of, they gave Somewhere, for instance. I don't think there's any major... It's a pretty well-known story.
Yeah.
50-year-old.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so Somewhere, which is usually a large ballad that Tony and Maria sing after he's murdered someone. It was going into that, and I thought, I was like, no, I don't want to see this. Like, it didn't feel appropriate.
Wait,
And
what?
so-
Wait, what? That song normally happens after he's killed
Well, it happens in the same spot.
her brother?
Yeah.
It happens in the same
Oh.
spot, but they usually sing it. It's a love song.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they gave it to Rita Moreno's
Oh,
character
yes.
as almost like a lament.
Yes.
And it kind of fixed that song
Yeah.
for me.
Yes.
Because I thought I knew it was coming, and I was like, no.
I mean, I've told you guys I am a West Side Story super fan. Like, it's part of my DNA. Grew up with it. I've been in the stage show and the pit orchestra for 2 times now. Know all the cues. Love the original movie, and watching this was so fascinating to really pick apart like the adaptation choices.
Right, and that's kind of what I meant at the beginning
Yeah.
with my long spiel. It's really about the choices that he made
Yeah.
from an existing, already good piece of IP. Is
Absolutely.
kind of what I meant. Yeah.
I completely agree, Jeremy. Like, what really bugs me about West Side Story, both the original show and the 61 version, is that, Act 2 is it's really bad. Like, it drags on and on. It's really, really sad.
Yes.
But then they pepper it with songs like Officer Krupke and with friggin' I Feel Pretty.
Yes.
And it's like this
It's
tonal whiplash.
unseemly. Yeah, yeah.
And then of course Somewhere, which is a beautiful number, but it's just I remember when I was in the pit, like we would get to Somewhere and it's like, get on with it. This is so long and and it's really melodramatic. And just fixing so much of that, like moving the rumble until much later in the show or in the movie, making sure that everything that happens after the rumble is in such a, I think it's only 40 or 45 minutes after the rumble, whereas in the show it's a complete hour and 20. Like everything's just tightened up so well. The characters of Bernardo and Chino are just, they're so much better in this movie. Like, especially Chino, in the original show, he appears for 2 scenes and then he shoots and kills Tony. That's his whole deal. And then he has an inner life.
Yes.
And he makes decisions, and it's like, man, this is like amazing writing to, as you say, Jeremy, fix so many of the shortcomings of the original show. So overall, like as a piece, it works so much better. Now, I think there's still some things that really don't work. I think Tony trying to explain to Bernardo why he loves his sister while they're about to slaughter each other is like, oh, what are you doing, buddy? But I would hopefully charitably chalk some of that up to the fact that these characters are teenagers and teenagers are stupid.
I also still didn't like I Feel Pretty coming directly after the murder.
But it's intentional, right? It's supposed to be this whiplash. Like...
But it's not funny. I mean, it's not meant to be funny. It's not fun. It's gross. And plus, she's only doing. And plus, in this movie, she's only in the room on her own, right? And previously, she's in the.
No, she's with all the other girls employees. At the.
At the cleaning.
Yes.
When they're cleaning.
Yeah. So it's
hasn't it been taken out of some of the revival shows? And Sondheim
Yeah,
has said that he doesn't like.
Sometimes the song isn't in it.
What's that? What did you say?
Yeah, sorry. Sometimes the song isn't in the stage musical version of it. I still didn't like it. But yeah, I just didn't like it. I don't know how you make that work better. And I appreciate what you say about the whiplash, but we get it because your lovers just killed your brother.
Well, maybe that is what you had. I mean, we talked about this in chat about how I Feel Pretty, traditionally comes straight after intermission.
Yeah, right.
And it's kind of a, the very first notes of post-intermission is boom, 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 ba 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 ba. It's to get butts and seats,
But that's lovely.
Yeah, right.
And that kind of works because you've had a breather to go, oh my gosh, what a tragedy. This is sad. Let's get a glass of wine. Oh, it's time to go back in.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't feel quite as I say,
jarring.
unseemly, distasteful as in this film. So I didn't like that.
I love this movie. It's the one that stuck with me the most over the summer. It was the one that I kept thinking about and sort of reminiscing about, and it was sort of like almost like a last minute decision to go see it. My brother and his fiance and my nephew and I went, and we just had a great time. Took a blanket because it's the height of summer and they pumped the aircon up.
Yeah.
It was a long movie and I was freezing, so I was really happy to have a blanket.
Yeah.
But I loved it, and I think that, and then now Encanto's kind of been building for me as well. But yeah,
real quick, just in terms of adaptational choices, going back to what you were saying, Sarah, I think the highlight for me is just Cool. What they did with Cool, and because Cool never really works in the musical.
No, I never liked it originally, and I liked it better this time.
I don't even remember it from the original movie.
So
they're in a car park.
Yeah, it's one of the Jets kind of riff second in command, and he's like, "We've just killed a guy. Let's stay cool, fellas." And it's pretty claustrophobic, so it's a low ceiling car park, and they're doing ballet where the heads are almost touching the ceiling, so it's nicely staged, but it doesn't fit in the movie.
Yeah.
In the original show, it's more like this, but it's kind of Tony trying to diffuse the situation, and he just comes off as a doofus. Whereas in this version,
it's terrifying. I thought the gun was going to go off at any moment.
Yeah.
And because of the hole in the floor.
Yes.
And the choreography's
over the
amazing.
ocean.
Yeah, I thought it was terrific.
I was so scared someone was going to get
It's like
killed,
the best adaptational change in the whole thing.
Is it Biff or Riff?
Riff.
I loved
Biff
Riff
and
in the
Back to
film.
the Future.
Biff, Riff, Raff. I loved...
Riff Raff is
Rocky Horror.
Rocky Horror.
I loved Riff in this film. He really, really made an impression on me. And him... I mean, Officer Krupke is my favourite number, and I don't care how they do it. I love all the words, and it's great. But it really made an impact on me that he had... sort of simultaneously everything to lose and nothing to lose because he has nothing. And there was a moment when I really realized that Riff is a product of the streets and ain't got no mother, ain't got no father. The gang is everything to him. And I felt deeply sad in the middle of a musical because that's real. And I thought his performance was stunning. And before we go, I think we have to acknowledge the Tony and the Maria, because I know that that's divisive. Although apparently everybody thinks the Maria's amazing. And she is. She's a great singer and she's amazing.
She won the Golden Globe, didn't
I don't
she?
care.
Why did she win the Golden Globe?
Because she's fresh and new and amazing, and she's terrific in it, and she's a great singer, and she's got chutzpah, which is terrific. But I don't love Rachel Zegler. I don't love her. Don't love her.
Oh, okay.
Look, I think she's blimmin' great, but I don't love her.
Okay.
And
Okay.
sometimes I'm a bit funny like that.
She does have a lot of chutzpah.
She does.
She initiates the kiss.
She
at
holds
the-
her own
yeah.
in that film astonishingly well. Now, Ansel Elgort, I got a lot of time for Ansel Elgort. I like him better than the previous Tony. I wouldn't give you tuppence for the previous Tony or Natalie Wood. But I know people don't like Ansel Elgort in this, huh?
I hate Ansel Elgort in this.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, I know I've just been raving about this movie, but for me, it's a one thumb up because I think Ansel Elgort almost single-handedly brings the movie down to its knees. I think he's a bad singer. Like his voice is so
I thought it was good.
He's
Beautiful
like
voice.
Maria, like a real flat. He has such a non-expressive face. And
But it's such a cute face.
I thought like all the scenes, the love scenes, just like collapsed because he isn't. Well, in my opinion, he just brings nothing to the table. And this is not talking about like the allegations and all the bad stuff that's happening around this, but I just think the performance is god awful.
What's the
sorry.
allegations?
No,
yeah.
they're nothing.
Bad
We don't
things.
even know
Yeah.
for sure.
Only allegations.
Oh, well, they're
But,
probably true.
I
Yeah.
liked him.
They're probably true. Okay, we'll figure, Google that, listeners, and you'll find out. I'm going to Google after this.
So yeah, one thumb from me.
I thought his singing voice was beautiful. I thought he didn't bring the movie down. I definitely think he was the weaker part. He was a bit drony. But for me, it was still passable. 2 thumbs up from me.
I'm gonna go 1 thumb up. It's weird. At the time, I was simultaneously, I think this is really well done, and I can keep going watching it, and I don't mind when this ends. And then afterwards, I just felt nothing. So
Interesting.
I know,
Wow.
because it's not a bad film at all. I think it's
a
good.
pretty good film.
And I love the 1961 version, and yet it's deeply problematic. And I'm not even being all PC about it. It's just when you're watching it, you don't like the fact that everyone has cocoa powder on their face and stuff, right? So I love the fact that there's none of that bullshit in this
Really
one.
obvious in HD.
Right, in the old version, right? So I love it's just so much better. And I love the beautiful woman who plays Rita Moreno's character, Anita, who did win the Golden Globe. And she's tremendous in this new version.
She's going to win the Oscar because it's such a good story, isn't it? You know, and there's that meta moment where she saves herself. You know, Anita saves herself, which is quite cool. Right, so that's West Side Story, The Power of the Dog, The Matrix, Resurrections, House of Gucci. I have to say it like that. The French Dispatch. I'm not going to say it with an accent. Encanto and Don't Look Up. So, team, go and watch them if you haven't already. You've heard our perspectives. I guess we all thought something positive about
All
at
of
least
them.
all of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah,
At least
yeah,
one of
yeah.
us was going to bat for one of these movies. Any last kind of comments or thoughts?
It's just such a packed December and January.
Always is, because it's
Yeah.
pre-Oscars, pre-Globes season.
And there's lots of movies we haven't seen. And if you haven't seen it already, go and see Scream. Go and see Nightmare Alley. What else is there?
The Eyes of Tammy Faye is about to come
I
out.
enjoyed that. Yeah.
So
The
yeah,
Last Duel.
yes.
older.
which has not fared well in the box office, but
Those
COVID will have a
dang
lot to...
millennials.
Those 35 to 40
But
year
it's
old
online
millennials.
now, so, you know, I would highly recommend people see The Last Duel.
Yeah, we watched it on whatever platform it's
That's
streaming on. So lots of great films, dear listeners. And I just want to say thank you for listening to another episode of Cinema in Context. If you enjoyed our podcast, then please share it with your film-loving friends. You can listen to Cinema in Context through SoundCloud, Spotify, Radio Public, Stitcher, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and even Instagram, which are great places to let us know what you think of this episode or give us suggestions for future films to discuss and compare. Look out for our next episode in a month's time, which will be our return to form, I think. Our February episode will compare 2 movies. And until then,
No mai!